Okay, so something that I thought I would do is go over the replays from a tournament that I played with Branded the other day, where I actually got first place. So I won a lot of games, of course, to get first place, and there was actually some fairly interesting games, so I want to go over them and analyze them in a lot of detail. I've been doing the analysis for like my WMGP matches before, but that season is over now, so there's not going to be any more WMGP matches until next season. And I was also doing it live on stream, which means that the videos were kind of just like stream VODs re-uploaded or like parts of them. So I thought I would do something a little bit different this time. I thought I would do it offline in a video form and actually get some even better analysis and even more detail. And we're going to go through every game, so it's it should be pretty fun. It's going to be quite long, so hopefully that's fine. If you like this channel, you're probably okay with long videos. But yeah, let's jump into the first game here. So what tournament did I play? This is Plushy Bell's Toy Box tournament, and it's a no maxi tournament basically. It's exactly the same format except maxi is banned. So I'm just gonna pause the game here, just to explain this a little bit. Before we go over the hands, let me just finish up by saying that it's best of three. You play, it's single elimination. You play best of three, and there is no side decking. You just submit your one deck that has no maxi in it, and then you play a best of three basically. And it's single elimination. There's like 4, 5, 6 rounds. So yeah, that's the tournament that we're playing, and I chose to play Branded as Amina. You can see that in the extra deck we're playing as Amina cards. We've also got Deception here. So let's talk about this hand. This hand is almost bad. The first 4 cards look like a brick, but then the last card actually saves it completely. It turns this hand from a really bad hand into actually a pretty damn good hand, just because Deception represents full combo, getting Tragedy in the graveyard, and then banishing with Sarania represents full branded combo. I meant to say full Azamina combo, and this is full branded combo. Plus we have Thrust to help play through hand traps, and we even have, you know, Deception is already a way to play around hand traps. This forces things because it sets up an Omni Negate. We summon Ilia Sylvia. That's the whole point of playing Azamina cards in this deck. It's to set up Ilia Sylvia before you go for your standard branded plays, like Branded Fusion, so that you actually play around Ash and Impulse better. That's something that I talked about in a recent video where I built the deck. I built Branded for Malice. So that's sort of what I'm playing here. Azamina Branded, it's not quite the same list. But yeah, let's get into how to play this hand. So the only live way to start playing is to, of course, activate Deception. We contribute the Tragedy. Tragedy can then be banished by Sarania, which gets to Aluba. The Hallowed Azamina that we search sets up our Omni Negate, and then we can go for a standard 1-card combo with Aluba. We even get to discard Albaz, which is a really good discard because it sets up Albaz in the graveyard. So we could just do a standard combo here. If we get hand trapped, we even have Thrust. It's going to be an insane end board if that happens. They're going to be down a card. We're going to have Mirror Jade, an Omni Negate potentially. Maybe we've used it to negate a hand trap, maybe not. And then Duplication. It's going to be a really strong hand, a really strong end board. So let's see how we play this. So we start by activating Deception. In this hand, of course, it's the only play, but generally, whenever you get to start with things like Deception or Branded Loss, these continuous spells that just activate on the field, same for like field spells like Wedge Temple and stuff that don't activate on the summon, on the activation, that don't do anything. It's a very good way to reveal the opponent's hand. If they're sat on toggled auto instead of toggled off, then you actually get a lot of information about their potential hand traps by activating a card like Deception. And that's exactly what happened in this game. I activated Deception and there was a response from my opponent. Which means it's going to be some sort of Omni response, something that can respond to everything, like Fool Us, like Maxi, like Lancia. In this case, it's not Maxi because Maxi's banned. So I actually did claim a lot of information here, and it was that we're probably looking at either Lancia or Fuwalas. It could also be March Hare, but not Maxi, because of course Maxi was banned. Another way to get information, this is going to be the theme of this match, by the way. This particular match is going to be all about information, is the deck size. The deck size reveals a lot of information. Generally, when you see a deck that is not 40 cards, you can rule out a number of decks. For starters, it's probably not Tenpai, because Tenpai is always 40 cards, right? It really needs as much consistency as possible. This is a 43 card deck, so this is probably not Tenpai. It's also, for the same reason, probably not Malice, although it's not impossible to be Malice, especially because the Omni response, in response to Deception, could be March Hare. That is a thing that it could be. And it could be like a Millennium build, a Terratop build, maybe both, some kind of hybrid build, maybe even Fiendsmith. That's possible, and that could be over 40, but generally Pure Malice is another 40 card deck. It also sort of rules out like the Pure Board Breaker Sky Striker Tenpai thing because they had a response. It's another reason it's probably not Sky Striker Tenpai. And then it's also probably not branded or anything 60 cards because it's only 43. It's a bit small for branded. So really, from a meta deck perspective, the amount of decks that this is narrowed down to is pretty much Snake Eye, which it turns out to actually be. And also maybe like Crystron, potentially. It's probably not some sort of Blue Eyes. I mean, Blue Eyes can be over 40, it could be Blue Eyes. But probably not like a Fiendsmith Control Primite deck. Those are also tend to be 40 cards. Even Blue Eyes, I think, is better at 40 cards these days. Like, after the hits, it's surely a 40 card deck. Not actually sure. But I was thinking it's probably not Malice and it's probably not Tenpai. And those are the most important ones to actually rule out. Especially Tenpai, because that massively indicates how you want to play your turn 1. So yeah, the most likely hand trap that we did figure out that they have is probably Fuwalas. So yeah, continuing with the combo. We activate the effect, and we have to tribute the tragedy for cost. Of course we want to tribute tragedy, so that we can banish it for Sarania. Now in response, they did have a toggle, they did have a response, and then they ended up chaining Fuwalas. So what does this reveal? I didn't notice this at the time, but in hindsight, this actually makes some amount of sense. The reason to chain the Fuwalas here and not in response to the Hallowed Azamina is because they also have this Dominus Impulse, which can potentially be used to negate the Hallowed. Right? And you can't Fuwalas after resolving an Impulse from the hand. You're locked out of Wind monsters. So by actually chaining the Fuwalas to the Search effect, they're preserving the opportunity to impulse my Hallowed. So that's why they did this. It's technically a little bit better to wait until the resolution of the search, but maybe they're being lazy, maybe they don't want to toggle on, because technically we can search for something else, right? Even though we're surely searching for Hallowed, technically there is other targets which we could have changed our mind about, so they probably, if they wanted to be perfectly optimal, should have used this on the resolution window, right? Like, instead of in response, but it's fine. And there was no response in response to their own card. That's something we picked up on. And now here, very importantly, on the resolution of the search, we saw another toggle from them, which is of course this Droll and Lockbird. And that's the first thing that you should always think about whenever you get a response window from the opponent on the resolution of a search. It's likely to be Droll. One thing that really made me think it was Droll is that if they are on auto, which they seemed to be because they had a response to Deception, the activation of the card, if they're on auto, Droll is the only card that's going to prompt them to use it in response to a search, right? Any other response like Lancia or a second Fuwalas or March Hare, you would need to be toggled on in order for that to prompt you. So Droll is likely here. The fact that they don't use the Droll is often an indicator that it's not draw, but in the case of being under Fua loss, it makes a lot of sense. The Fua has resolved, so they don't want to use the draw, because that would just deny them their own draws. So yeah, we're going to continue. Now we activate the Sarania, and we target the Tragedy. Why do we activate this before going for the Azamina, the Hallowed Azamina? The reason is because we know that they have more hand traps, and we're trying to force hand traps as much as possible, because, I mean, we play through them all, right? We have Thrust, we have Verte line, we are playing Verte, that's very good in the Azamina build. It's very common for you to go like Murcielago or something, and then it gets stopped, and then you pivot into a Verte line just because you have that body on the board. So we're actually going for the Sarania first, in this case, because it might bait potential hand traps. It also gains more information. I think it's kind of whatever in this particular hand. You could go Hallowed first. I chose to go Sarania first. I don't think it matters too much. And here, in response to the Sarania, the effect in the hand, there was another toggle, another response window, which gives more information. This is new information now, right? It's the impulse that they had, and they obviously didn't use it, but it clearly wasn't the draw, which we figured they might have. So we're thinking, is this a second Fua loss? Is this potentially, you know, a Lancia? Is this a March Hare? Is this some sort of Omni response? Or is it something that can be responded to Sarania specifically? And assuming they're at auto, we're actually going to be able to find out when we trigger the Tragedy. So we trigger Tragedy, and there is no response. I understand, by the way, that the replay doesn't show the responses, so it's a little bit awkward. You'd have to sort of take my word for it. I'm trying to recall it as best I can, but I do remember this player was on auto the whole time, so we know what they would be able to respond to. And then in response to the search, they actually had the toggle again, which reinforces the notion that it's probably draw. We normal summon the Alaba, again no response. Given what we've seen so far from this player, we're pretty confident at this point that they are on auto. So we know that there's probably no Ash, because you can Ash Tragedy and you can Ash Alaba, but they did have a response to Sarania. So now I'm sort of figuring out that it's probably Impulse, just because what else can you respond to the Sarania with that isn't also, you know, an Omni response that can respond to Alaba or Tragedy? I was thinking it could be Lancia, but of course you would probably use Lancia to deny the Bestial, especially banishing a Tragedy. So it's not Lancia. And it's not Ash, so now I'm thinking the only thing it could be is Dominus Impulse. And even though we haven't seen the Dominus Impulse yet, we already gain information from the fact that Dominus Impulse is likely in their hand, right? We're thinking, okay, it's probably not Snake Eye, because Dominus Impulse doesn't work too well with pure Snake Eye. It works well with Fire King Snake Eye, but that's less popular than Fiendsmith Snake Eye. And this locks you out of life, so you can't use Fiendsmith or the Millennium cards. So it's probably not Snake Eye. And now I'm thinking, could it be Mermail? Mermail Atlantean? Could it be an actual Malice deck? I didn't think Mermail would be likely to play over 40, but perhaps it will, and Malice could also be over 40. So now I'm thinking it might be a Malice deck, just because we're detecting Impulse, and it doesn't really seem like anything else makes sense for what it could be. Could be, technically I guess it could be like a Ghost Bell, right, that can respond to Sarania and then nothing else, but I wasn't thinking about Ghost Bell. That card is very rare. So we search Branded Fusion, and then here we do something very important. This is a common tactic that I use. It's to use Thrust when you're under Fua or Maxi. Use the Thrust before activating the Branded Fusion, just because this can be ashed, and this gives them a draw. So if they don't have Ash yet, and you activate Branded Fusion, they're not going to Ash it because they don't have it, but they might draw into Ash with the summons from Branded Fusion, and then they might Ash your Thrust afterwards. Whereas if you do it this way around, it's not possible because the Thrust gives them no draws, and they haven't yet drawn Ash. So it's just something that we're playing around. And then here I make a a little bit of a strange play. In hindsight, this looks a little strange, but under Fualas, it all kind of makes some sense still, which is to go for Branded Fusion before the Howler does it, you know. The logic here is that we detected the Impulse. They're probably going to Impulse this. If I went for the Howler as Amina, if they were smart, they would obviously not Impulse this, because even if we summon Ilia Sylvia, which is the Omni Negate, it gives them a draw for Fua, and then they can Impulse the Branded Fusion, and we have to chain our Omni Negate. And that gives them a lot of draws. So I was actually willing to just take the L here on the Branded Fusion, because I wanted to deny them resources. We already detected Impulse and Droll. We knew about this Droll almost certainly, and we thought about the potential Impulse. If they negate Branded Fusion, they still don't get a draw, and we have duplication, not to mention an Omni Negate. So we're actually gonna have, they're gonna have a lot of, not a lot of resources, right? Versus quite a lot from us. So I actually walk into this Impulse on purpose. So now that we confirmed the Impulse, we now know that the Droll is dead. It's pretty much dead anyway, because if you don't Droll immediately at the start of a game, it basically ceases to exist, right? But it is a win, so technically it is literally dead. And we know that it's there, so we know that they're only on 2 relevant cards. And we have duplication. So we go for Hallowed. We summon the Sylvia directly. No reason to go through the Murcielago, because that would give an extra draw for Fualas. So we just summon the Ilia Sylvia and pass. And one other thing to mention is that in the end phase here, there was another toggle. And this one is actually very important, because I thought a long time about this toggle. They had something in the end phase. They didn't think about it for very long, but it did light up. So we knew that they had a respond in the end phase here. In the end phase, this obviously could not be March Hare. We knew it could not be a second Fualas or a Lancia or any light monsters, because they've used Impulse. So it's not a Fualas, it's not a Maxi, it's not the Droll, and it's not March Hare, it's not Veiler, it's not Nibiru, because it's the end phase. Clearly what it has to be is an Imperm or a Bestial. And I was thinking to myself, actually it can't be a Bestial, because there's no dark monsters in the graveyard. I remember thinking, what is this card? Is it a Bestial? No, there's nothing in the graveyard. So it has to be Imperm. It basically has to be Imperm. There's no other card that this can really be. I guess technically it could have been Perulia, but it would have to have been top decked specifically, and what deck plays, you know, all of these, like Perulia, Impulse, Fua, it would have to be Tenpai, and we already kind of know it's not Tenpai because the deck is too big. So we now enter their main phase with the information that they probably have Imperm plus Roll and only 3 potential engine cards. I know I'm talking a lot about this game, and obviously it turns out they have nothing, right? Birch is a brick, cross out Cold Bite, they don't have any plays. But suppose that they did have plays, we would be able to navigate their turn with the knowledge that they have 2 dead cards. The Imperm can obviously force the Sylvia right away if they want it to. The Cold Bite also checks the Sylvia, but in regards to the duplication, we know that we're only dealing with 3 engine cards here. They don't have any plays, so we just flip this in the end phase. They don't even set their cards because they're pretty much dead no matter what. Here, they choose to Imperm, and we choose not to negate. They also chain the Cold Bite. It doesn't really make sense why you would chain the Cold Bite, because it's basically lethal on board. But they do go for the Lubellion, probably just showing me that they bricked. And then here, we have lethal on board. The only other thing to consider is that if we activate Sylvia to negate like a Bestial or something from the hand, we would no longer have lethal. So just to make sure that that is still lethal, we normal summon this Albaz. and now it's still lethal if we don't, even if we have to use the Sylvia. So that was a very easy game 1. But I wanted to mention all of the toggle reading because it is important. And notice that going into game 2, we do not know what deck they're playing. So yeah, that was game 1. Okay, so now this is game 2. They of course selected going first. And we're going to find out what deck they're playing. So let's look at the opening hands. We are fortunate enough to draw Fuelas, which is one of the only hand traps in our list. Remember, there's no Max C. So this is one of the only hand traps. It's really our best hand trap, alongside like the Bestials. And then the hand is okay. Thrust is also pretty good going second. We are playing 60, we are playing Grass. So we have a decent hand for going second. Our opponent's hand, you can see that it turns out, surprisingly, they are on Millennium, Fiendsmith, Snake-Eye, which makes the impulse from the previous game pretty suspicious. We let them go main phase instead of activating Fua in the draw phase or the standby phase because I personally just never do this. I never use Fua in the draw phase or standby phase. I don't think it's right. It plays into talents, but in my experience, talents is just not very common. So I just let it happen most of the time. I let them start playing and then I Fua. So we see the Millennium, and immediately my thought is, what the heck are they playing? Because they played Impulse, which conflicts with the Millennium cards. The first thing that crossed my mind was, it has to just be like a Snake-Eye deck. We already thought that the deck size indicates Snake-Eye. The fact that they're going first in this game means Snake-Eye. Well, it means not Tempai. It could be anything else, of course. But having Millennium cards and also Impulse is a little strange. I couldn't help shake the feeling that maybe the opponent didn't know this. Maybe they played Impulse despite not realizing how badly it conflicts with Engraver, you know, Fiendsmith. Especially, like, Millennium is okay. If you're playing, like, Millennium Malice, you can kind of slot in Impulse anyway, and then just not use the Millennium going second. But if you're playing Fiendsmith, Fiendsmith is a huge part of the deck, even going second. So it feels a little strange that they would include Impulse in this list. But of course, they're going first now, so we're just gonna see. We're gonna see what they're playing, and we're gonna see what they're up to. When they go for this, I was a little excited, thinking Zombie Vampire is coming, and Zombie Vampire is generally okay in Branded. If you don't mind getting milled for, it's obviously like not the worst thing in the world. You can mill resources, especially when it's Snake-Eye specifically, because the Snake-Eye board, unlike Malice, is often breakable for Branded. And if you have extra resources because they milled some for you for free, then that's actually really good, and it's actually really it's really nice, right? It helps you break the board pretty well, so that is something that I was hoping for. We Fua loss here. The reason to Fua here is because, of course, they're threatening to make Doomed Dragon, but one argument I've seen before is wait until they summon the Doomed Dragon so that you force the Doomed Dragon onto the board, right? Doomed Dragon is pretty good against Branded because it forces Mirror Jade and it puts it in the back row. So just in case this game goes long and into a grind game, does it not make sense to let them summon the Doomed Dragon? Well, the answer is no, because if we don't use the Fua now, if we just give them the free summon, they are one normal summon away from a 4-man Appaloosa and passing, which gives one draw for Fua, and then potentially beats me, right? It probably doesn't, because Diabellstar beats Appaloosa pretty well. But in general, you don't want to give them that option, right? So we Fua now, so that they can't have the easy Appaloosa. But they call by it, so of course there's not really anything to think about anymore. We just watch the movie. Okay, so at this point we're just watching the movie. The only other thing to consider, I guess we gotta watch out for the mills. Maybe we do mill something. So let's see what they are. So they mill Lancia, Diabellstar, which they summon, an Engraver, and the Temple, which is a good mill for them because they did not have access to Snake Eye, and now they do. And for us, we milled Retribution plus Branded Fusion, which is pretty good. You can't really ask for better than this. Like, the best thing you could possibly get is like a Bestial in the hand, a Makuri in the graveyard, plus like Cartesia and the Golden Sword Soul, you know, that kind of thing. It's wishful thinking to get that, but anything that is a play by itself, given to you for free by the Zombie Vampire, is really, really good. So I'm actually feeling good about breaking this board, especially because we have the Thrust, which can get Grass, which is very good against, you know, breaking boards. So from here, let's just watch the rest of their combo. It is worth noting, by the way, that the optimal way to play this, I don't actually remember if I did this or not, but the optimal way to play this is to toggle off immediately after the Zombie Vampire, because of course we have the Retribution. If we're on auto, we have the Retribution in response to everything, right? And we haven't had a hand trap before. We obviously had the Fua, but then afterwards we had no responses. And then the response would come after the Zombie Vampire, so it's pretty obvious if we had that response window what is going on to the opponent. However, there is a small chance that they don't really look at the graveyard of the opponent, you know. I don't think it's a very big chance, but there is always a chance that they don't, and there's always a chance that they forget. So the optimal way to actually play this is to toggle off and not use the Retribution at all, not let the toggle exist, until key moments in the combo where you want to threaten Nibiru, basically. So the optimal way to play this is to have toggled off this whole time until now, when they revive with the Lacrima. Now we toggle on, we're threatening Nibiru. And then we don't use anything, they make the Caesar, and it's possible that they suspect Nibiru, even though if they're smart, they obviously can figure out that it's just the Retribution. At this point, they keep playing, they use the Tract, they make Appaloosa. Now here, I kind of realized something quite important, and that is that this is a mistake. I play a lot of Snake Eye, and I've been in situations similar to this. This is a mistake. To make the Appaloosa here, the reason it's a mistake is because they actually milled Temple. They might have forgotten about this, they might not have noticed this, or they might have never encountered this situation. But without Temple here, you actually struggle. And you'll see why. If we send the Wedgie, and we go for Snake Eye Ash, we can search the Poplar, and the Poplar does not have a target, right? They link it off into Linkuriboh in order to place it in the back row. But since they didn't have a target, because they milled their second target, which was the Temple, they're in a situation now where they can't actually link off in the way that they want to, right? Because the Linkuriboh needs to be made if they want to get the Poplar effect in the back row. And now when they use the Snake Eye Ash, they can summon Flamberge, but these two monsters cannot make Masquerena, which is the only real monster you want to make in this position. Obviously Masquerena is the best one, because then you want to place it back in the back row, that's how you play Snake Eye. And you can't make Masquerena with a Linkuriboh. So the only way to link these off is to actually waste some sort of Fire Link 2 or SP, basically. You either waste your SP or you waste your Phoenix if you're playing it. You can't even make Sunlight Wolf. So there's a chance that if you don't play Nightmare Phoenix, which not all Snake Eye decks do, there's a chance that you have to make SP here, right? Because you can't even make Sunlight Wolf. You need 2 fires for that. So they actually did make a mistake. If they played a second target or a third target for Poplar, like, what is it called? Snake Eye Chase? Then that would get them to the Snake Eye Diabellstar, which fixes this problem. And normally the temple fixes this problem because that also gets to Snake Eye Diabellstar. But in this situation, when they don't have that, they're stuck with the two bodies, and this is not good. So we can see that they actually have to go into Phoenix. It's lucky for them that they had the Phoenix, because they could have potentially been forced to make SP here. And another thing to note is that I had toggled on at this point. I had toggled back on, at least onto auto, because if they were to make SP here, they would of course activate it, and they would probably target Branded Fusion or Retribution. So at the very least, we didn't want to be caught off guard. So I did toggle back on just for this, but then once I saw the Phoenix, I toggled back off. This triggers their Flamberge, and now they get to make Promethean Princess. But here's the problem. Unless you're playing the Sunlight Wolf as well, you're kind of in trouble here. Most Snake Eye decks played the Sunlight Wolf, so I wasn't actually thinking too much about this at the time. I saw that they placed the Nightmare Phoenix, which is, you know, a result of their misplay. They don't actually have anything good to place here. So they placed the Nightmare Phoenix, and then they set and pass. So this is the big deal. If they had Sunlight Wolf, they could of course link off the Poplar and the Princess into Sunlight Wolf, but clearly they're not playing it. Their link 2 of choice has been Phoenix. Even though I like to play both, they clearly don't play the Sunlight Wolf. If we look at the extra deck, we can see that they're playing Saryuja instead of the Sunlight Wolf, which is... Part of me feels responsible for this, even though I'm sure I'm not, but I did like playing this at one point. However, I played it, I quickly got rid of it, right, and I put the Phoenix plus the Sunlight Wolf back in the deck, because these fire links to get rid of your princess are very important in Snake Eye. You can very easily get caught out with awkward combos like this, especially if you don't think it through. So my opponent got caught out without the Sunlight Wolf, and now they have to have the princess on the field, which means it's no longer a disruption. And the Snake Eye Flamberge Dragon doesn't summon anything useful. Phoenix doesn't trigger on summon, it has to be link summoned. So there's basically only an Appaloosa and a Caesar here plus 1 back row. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. Especially the back row, it means that there's no Ash. So yeah, we can break this board. We draw Nibiru right on time, of course. The reason we don't Retribution in the end phase is because this list is only playing 1 Retribution. If we were playing 2, we would add back in the end phase so that we can use the second one on this turn if we wanted to. But since we're only playing 1, there is no reason to use it right away. We might as well save it for when we have the most information, you know? There's always a chance that we don't actually want to add back the Branded Fusion. It's not a high chance, but there's always a chance. So we leave it in there for now. Now we start by summoning the Diabellstar. Of course the Nibiru is useless, so we discard that one. And Diabellstar is the best way to start here because it can attack over Appaloosa, especially with the Princess on the field where Linkuriboh is dead. You can't special summon Linkuriboh while Princess is on the field because of the Firelock, and Diabellstar is already bigger than Appaloosa, so even if this is Impalm, we can attack right over the Appaloosa, whether they use it or not. So we activate, they negate. Of course, they would negate to get value out of it. They know that it's going to be attacked over right now. And now, the only other thing to think about is, can we realistically OTK them? They are only on 4,000. So is OTK reasonable? We decide not really. We do have to play through the disruption, especially because we don't have to OTK. We have much better grind game than the Snake Eye deck, so we should just go battle phase, and that's what we do. We clear the Appaloosa. Now in main phase 2, what can we do here? So if we just went Retribution, add back Branded Fusion, it gets negated by High King Caesar, which is a problem. So what can we do to get around that? What can't be negated by High King Caesar? Well, Kit to search, Thrust, Grass, and anything while Branded Lost is on the field that would ordinarily be negated, like a Cartesia or a Branded Fusion. If Branded Lost is on the field, that can't be negated by Caesar. So the way we want to play this is to go for the Kit, and then search the Branded Lost, then activate the Retribution, so that we can get the Branded Fusion, and then they can't negate it. This plays around Ash because there is no Ash, The only thing that it plays into is a potential imperm here on the kit, which would be awkward. And if that was the case, if this was imperm, we would pretty much have to rely on thrust getting like grass and milling pretty well, which is quite unlikely if I'm honest. We could still go Verte, of course, and Verte can't be negated by Hiking Caesar, so we still get some value. But we take the risk, and it is not imperm. We don't really have a better play, so we have to do this. We put back the Cartesia here because thrust is better. If we do get to break the board, we know we're in main phase 2, so we're not going to kill them. If we do get to break the board, activating thrust and then setting duplication is obviously going to be better. It's going to be really strong. So now we add back the branded fusion. And at this point, the only thing that this could be to punish us is like an MST, you know, something that can deal with branded loss. And of course it's not. They summon the Phoenix here, which I think is really funny because it's almost as if they thought that it could trigger just to pop the Lost. It can't, of course. So now we go for the branded fusion. They activate the Caesar. I'm not sure if they thought it would negate or if they just realized that they were basically losing here. I think they probably thought it would negate. We send the Golden Sword Soul. Why do we send the Golden Sword Soul? We actually have a pretty fancy line here. So let's see what we do. Normally we would send Lubellion and then Tribute Lubellion, but since we already have Branded Lost on the field, it's not super important to go Lubellion. The only thing that Lubellion does is put the Albion into the graveyard. That's all it does at this point, because we're not playing another target for it. So if there's a better way to put the Albion into the graveyard, then it's usually preferable over just sending Lubellion when you already have access to Lost. So going for the Golden Sword Soul gives us a much better line here. We go Chainlink 1 Albion, Chainlink 2 Branded Lost. They can't respond at this point because Branded Lost is giving us a Branded Lost window. And it's important that we go Chainlink 1 Albion and Chainlink 2 Branded Lost so that we get another Branded Lost window on the resolution. If we did it the other way around, then they would be able to respond. So this is important that we did it this way around. And we're going to summon Renbro. This is a unique line for when you have Kit on the field instead of Alaba. Often this is Alaba, right? In your normal combos, you normal summon an Alaba. You search Branded Fusion, you go Albion, and then you have to make Lubellion only because Alaba is not, you know, material for Rinbrum. It's just a dark monster. But Kit is different because Kit can be either Lubellion or Rinbrum, and in this case, the Rinbrum is actually kind of good here. The Rinbrum does something very special for us, which is, it means that if they want to activate this Caesar, which doesn't really make any sense to activate the Caesar because they're obviously under Branded Lost, they can't negate the Sword Soul at this point because it's still on the resolution, it's still in the Branded Lost window. Now if we activate Cartesia and they chain the Rinbrum, we can chain, if they chain the Caesar, we can chain the Rinbrum at that point to negate and bounce. But it doesn't make sense for them to use it because of the Branded Lost, but given that they negated the Branded Fusion, I'll be honest, at this point I did expect them. I made this almost expecting them to play into the play that we have set up here. They activate the Cartesia, they chain, and now we get to negate for free. Even though this would resolve, this would completely resolve, I actually like using the Rinbrum here because it gives me an opportunity to actually bounce a card. So we negate, and here's an interesting question if you want to try and figure it out before we reveal. What do you bounce? What monster do you bounce? Is it the Caesar? Is it the Princess? Is it the Flamberge? It could be the Flamberge because getting it out of the hand is difficult. Could be the Princess because Princess represents a lot of follow-up. Could be the Caesar itself. Could be the Nightmare Phoenix just because it is a Link 2 representing a lot of material. Or it could be our own cards. If you think things through, obviously bouncing Poplar would be the worst because it just summons itself again. If you think it through, it turns out the right one to bounce is your own Diabellstar. Just because bouncing any of these is pretty negligible impact, and getting another discard into our hand has a high impact because we want to use this thrust. so we currently don't have any discards. So bouncing the Diabellstar actually goes the hardest here. It actually represents the most benefit. So the Cartesia resolves, and we summon Grand Granol. The card to send here is Titaniclad. The reason it's Titaniclad is because we haven't got to a Mirror Jade yet, and our opponent has a big board of monsters, which is always enticing, because that means in the end phase, we're going to get to summon out our Albaz and fuse into our Mirror Jade. And that's a really good play going second, especially into Snake Eye. So next, we use the Thrust, we get the dupe, and we set the dupe, and then we activate the Cartesia. It's important that we activate the Cartesia first, before going for Titaniclad. This is very common, because you're going to want to discard the Cartesia for the Albaz, not the other card. I set the Banishment first, but I actually think that this was a misplay, because this back row is still unknown, and while we thought about it being Imperm, and we sort of realized that it's not, because we normal summoned the kit and they didn't stop it. It is possible, especially given that they seem to be quite, inexperienced with the matchup using Caesar under Branded Lost. It's possible that it is still Imperm, and that they just misplayed it and didn't use it in the right place earlier. So I am still considering my Albaz getting Impermed here. In which case we probably want to hold the Albion search until we at least know what's going on, right? It's just more information. It's better to choose afterwards. But it doesn't really matter. We were pretty much always going for Banishment here. And then we summon the Albaz, discard the Cartesia again, because Cartesia comes back on their turn. Diabellstar doesn't, so it's better to discard this one. And we fuse away the Caesar into Mirror Jade. The reason why we fuse away the Caesar is because leaving Princess on the board is actually a good thing. You might think that this card offers follow-up, so you want to get rid of it. But actually, leaving it on the board locks them out of a lot of the rest of their extra deck. It means that they can't revive the Fiendsmith, which is the only real grind game part of the deck. And it means that they can't make SP. In this case, they also can't make the Saryuja that they have. And if you look at the rest of the extra deck, it's basically just SP and then the Fiendsmith cards, right? The IP is nothing at this point. And then this is like their little special tech. But Promethean Princess locks them out of all of it. So it's actually a really good idea to just leave it on the board in this kind of situation, and then, keep them locked out of their own deck. So we just pass turn. One thing that we do want to do in the draw phase is, because the Flamberge is threatening to activate, we want to actually get rid of it. And one way to do that is to banish it with Mirror Jade. However, there's actually a much better option, and that's to use Banishment. We use Banishment to revive the Albion. We can make Chaos with their Flamberge. Flamberge is a dragon, and Chaos's materials take a light or dark dragon, and then any dragon. It doesn't have to be 2 lights or darks. It could be any dragon. So banishing it with Banishment here for Chaos is pretty strong. Simply banishing the Flamberge is good enough on its own, but at this point we also get to trigger the Chaos to pop a card and the Branded Lost to search. The card we target here is the Phoenix. I think it's arguable to target the back row, just so that you know what you're dealing with. You kind of know that the monsters are easy to beat. They're locked onto Princess, the extra deck is small, we know that it's only Fiendsmith. Getting rid of this one unknown is reasonable. But you could also argue that the fact that it wasn't used at all on my turn means it's probably not a good card. So you can probably infer that it's cross out at this point. Although I didn't at the time, I didn't know what this was. I thought it must just be something, I didn't know what it would be, basically. I thought it might be a cold buy or an imperm that they just had no idea how to use. I didn't think about cross out, but in hindsight, looking back, it is obviously cross out. But we go for the Phoenix here, just because it gets rid of link material. And of course we search for Mercuria, so that we have a negate now as well. Here we have Rinbrum, can negate and bounce anything that they do. Mirror Jade can banish. Duplication can make whatever we want. We can pop the Rinbrum, we can revive the Albaz. We can negate with Mercuria. We can even discard Diabellstar, which triggers and summons itself. We have Grand Granol, which still has Quem as a target for its second effect. This is basically unbreakable, even if they had their whole deck available, never mind, you know, locked under Princess at this point. So we can just let them do whatever they want. They activate the Princess. We decide at this point we might as well just negate and bounce. Even though this turns off their lock, it makes the Fiendsmith live. We don't have any trouble dealing with this Fiendsmith. We have so many disruptions, as we just went over. So at this point, it's just going through the motions, really. They activate the OSS, but this doesn't mean anything. The Birch is completely useless. Then they go for Bonfire here, which means we now have full information about the hand. We know that it's Snash plus Birch. They normal summon, and we just decide, you know what, we're going to banish. We banish, and then negate Engraver. They've just got nothing. They've got no way to extend except this one mystery back row, which we know is dead. We know it does nothing. So we just banish the Snash. They can't summon the Birch. Activate Engraver. We actually let it come out just because there's no reason not to. Like, we can negate anything at any time. Let them waste the sequence. They could have gone SP there, but we would have completely played through SP. It's fine. We just negate the sequence. They flip the cross out, revealing what it was, and then the game is over at this point. So they call Ash, and yeah, they can keep playing a little bit, but it doesn't go anywhere from here. There's a potential second Doom Dragon here, which I thought about. Some Snake Eye lists do play 2 Doom Dragon, but even that wouldn't be the end of the world. Like, we have duplication on top of everything. It's we can't lose at this point. Fiendsmith can't OTK. They can't break this board. So they scoop it up, and that is 2-0. That is the first round of the tournament. We beat Snake Eye.